So this first one is, I believe this is a field museum in Chicago. There's a lot of stuff there, a lot of stuff. This place had some pretty amazing stuff. You've got, obviously dinosaurs. There's elephants, a lot of cultural things. But some of the things that really fascinated me, besides these enormous skeleton, this is not a brontosaurus, by the way. This is something called a titanosaur. It's literally the largest. I don't know if you can see the whole screen, um, but let me see if I can zoom out. It's literally the largest animal ever to be on land, apparently. Let's see here. I wonder what my video settings are set to. Uh, can you guys see the entire creature, or well, I guess there's a couple of columns there now. Where did my chat go? There we go. All right. So what can you guys see on the screen right now? What I've got is two enormous totem poles. All right, well, I'll just keep going. So, yeah, basically the Field Museum's got Chinese culture, Mesoamerican cultural artifacts. There's plant life. Probably one of the most amazing things is their plant collection. They send people all over the world to gather and collect these varieties of plants that you don't normally see anywhere else on the planet, especially, I'm guessing, in Chicago. But a lot of them are tropical, found in either South America or Africa or Central America, or just below the equator in different parts of the world. This one is actually the top of a coconut tree. If you've ever seen a coconut tree, you probably recognize this. What's kind of fascinating is all the things you can make out of the different parts of the coconut. I mean, they had rope, brushes, spoons, you name it. The other interesting thing about a lot of these plants is, and I thought if Sarah made it on here, she'd probably be interested in a lot of this, is just the sort of diverse visual and material characteristics of all these plants. Um, I mean, some of these things look, they're so gigantic. I can't even really express the scale of some of these plants. They look prehistoric, and these are actual plants that are alive, presumably now, not extinct, but alive now somewhere in the world. And a lot of what I'm showing you now are not actually even physically the plants. These are not um, uh, actual pieces of those plants, and I'll show you what I mean in a minute. These are all cast copies. Look at the size of this. This is a dude. This is a normal, presumably a normally sized man, and look at the size of this flowering plant. It's like something out of Forbidden Planet, or one of those Ray Harryhausen dinosaur films, right? There we go. Is a better picture of that. That looks insane. It just looks insane. It's from right out of Island of Monsters. It's just crazy that something like that even exists in this world. So here's what I'm talking about. Yeah, Land of the Giants. This guy, and he's probably, they should have an entire museum section dedicated to him. They've got a little corner, but this guy is the one who actually made all of this possible. He's the one who, look at the size of this press cast. He made a gigantic plastic press cast for every one of the plants, and maybe some of the seeds, I guess all the seeds, fruit, whatever, on display in this museum. He came up with his own method of doing it. Um, and what a lot of these, I think these were mostly aluminum. He's got kind of this sort of sandwich plate where he would lay the plastic on it, and I can't remember what kind of plastic it was. I think he came up with his own formula for it to determine what would be the best kind of material to emulate the plant life, and then here you've got different um, tinted versions of that. He actually figured out a way to tint the plastics to mimic the actual colors of the real plants. So all of these plants are artificial. These samples were collected out in the field. They were brought back to the museum, and then they were given to this guy to figure out how to replicate them so that people could see what they look like. Um, here's a lot of that process. These are all plastic. Uh, here's a kind of a close up of some of these are the plastic beads, I guess the source material he used, and some of the cast molds. You can see the reference points in the casting molds. Um, I'm guessing these were all some kind of Byzantine or lead or maybe aluminum, something that would be easy to melt and pour. Since the plastic was pretty soft, it wouldn't require anything like steel, obviously, or any. It'd be a low temperature metal, and then a very low heat could be introduced to form the plastic leaves and whatnot. They also had to maintain a certain amount of flexibility in them too. And it looks like in a few of these, he's got kind of a small wire um, sort of molded into the plastic for the leaves. But I just thought this was fascinating. It's not something you normally see anywhere. Nobody ever tells you how they made the stuff, so I thought that would be kind of a cool thing for you guys to see. Here's another close up of that. Yeah, so here's the wire. If you look closely, you can even see that they managed to get a plastic that was able to hold a really high amount of detail in terms of the type of texture the leaves had also. So I thought that was cool. So he would literally put a plant in there, make a sort of a negative of it, create the mold, and then heat up the plastic and place it in these metal molds using these little reference points and just sandwich them together. Yeah, don't they? Maybe in somebody's garage they do. I guess just don't get caught. But yeah, he had. Well, he didn't do this in the field. I think he actually had a workshop. They would bring him the plants out. I don't know if now I don't know if they would cast in some cases specific leaf types out in the field to bring back to make copies of, or if they preserve them in some way. Um, but he had an entire shop back in the states to create these. He didn't do these out in the field, at least not that I would read anywhere. But there's another method of creating molds to cast larger objects like fruit. I thought that was pretty cool. Here's one of his little pancake molds or waffle molds, I guess you'd call it. I'm not sure how you'd refer to it as. A press mold is what I would refer to it as, or a hand press. These are all plastic. Every one of these, it's just insane. So yeah, the diversity in the types of plants, the textures, the thicknesses of the leaves, the way some of these plants defend themselves, some of the materials that they're able to create from them is pretty insane. These are all the. This is kind of like the. This is a nut. This is a giant nut. It looks like a zoom in of a walnut, but it's actually some type of or an almond. But it's some kind of gigantic nut. What you're looking at on the screen, um, I would say in real life, these things were probably the size of a small handbag. If you like Alien, I'm pretty sure this is where Ridley Scott got the idea. This is another pod, a seed pod with some gooey stuff inside. Incidentally, and you guys can tell me in the comments, and I would recommend telling me now. Um, I do go to a science museum later, and there are some cadavers and some other things that show the muscle tissue and nervous systems, the capillaries in the bloodstream and things like that. So it could get some people might find it a little bit gory. If you don't want to see that, let me know now, or I would suggest that I'll give you a warning before I show it. And if you're not comfortable with looking at that, then I will, you can just turn away or go to a different screen or something. But For those of you that are interested, I'll be showing you that later. But yeah, this thing's crazy. This was about the size of a basketball, gigantic. This is another one. I mean, I had just these crazy textures in the roots and the seed pods. This is actually not a root. This is a giant seed pod of some kind. Just some gnarled, weird-looking seed. It's a kind of fruit. I think it's related to a melon or a cantaloupe. I want to say I've seen something like this in the grocery store in a really small version of it. Here's some others. Yeah, just to give you kind of a scale, the ones in the green up here that look like big giant peas on a like uh, like Christmas ornaments or something up on the left with the number two next to them. Those are about the size of softballs. So that might, I mean, if you look at a small watermelon off to the right, that gives you kind of an idea of the size of these things. Those weird sort of phallic looking things up at the top, where they're like the size of small bats or a French bread. Just enormous. Pomegranate, different types of woods. These are all the different types of woods they had on display there. You can go back and check that out later if you want to look at that and pause the video. And here's the guide for that. More seeds. These are the edible seeds, grains, the pea family. I had no idea. This is crazy. These are desert plants. They exist only in the desert in dry, arid regions like this. Um, and one of the things I wanted to show you here is this is not a photograph. These are large samples of the plants, and up to about a point, I'd say about a 2 feet or a foot behind these plants that are in the foreground, then it's a photograph, and I'll show you guys some modeled miniatures of small cities and other things where they incorporate a lot of photos into the diorama of the setting. That might be something interesting that you guys could maybe take and use in your own work if you decide to go the route of terrain building or dioramas. The dinosaur section. So this fish skeleton is about, I'd say, 7 feet, 8 feet long. The one up on top is around 8 to 9 feet long. These nautilus were pretty huge also. I'd say the one on the far right was probably about the size of um, a 14-inch frying pan at the very least. It's pretty enormous. So they had a lot of stuff here. This, I'll show you what these two people are standing next to here in a little bit. So there's that guy. Fossilized skull of one of those sea creatures. I'd say this one's about, it was around 3 feet, 3.5 feet long. Pretty enormous. Would not want to swim with that. Another one. Some tortoise shells. It's pretty interesting about these is some of the textures on these shells. Even the fossilized one, pretty flat, aerodynamic looking. Ancient crocodiles and alligators, of course. Yeah, raised by wolves. Well, I think, like I said, Ridley Scott took a lot of more peculiar plants that he's probably come across in his travels, and he incorporated it into that show in either some sort of. He either had his effects department copy them, or he would just went out and just got those actual plants to use. Um, and I think there's some episodes of some old episodes of Star Trek Next Generation where they're all eating at a banquet with a bunch of aliens, and they put a lot of real fruits that people just weren't familiar with at the time. I think like dragon fruit and other things, some more exotic stuff that people just weren't familiar with, and said they were alien plants. So this guy, pretty interesting. This is how they have figured out this thing communicated. It kind of acted like a huge tuba or a horn. The air would come in, circulate around the back of the skull, and this is like kind of a huge nasal cavity embedded into the skull, and it'd make this kind of noise when it would communicate with others of its kind, or I mean, I guess when it maybe sounded an alarm when there was danger. But that's how they made their noise, just kind of like this honking sound, which I imagine was pretty loud. I mean, this head is pretty enormous. This is probably, I mean, twice the size of a horse head, if you can imagine that. Another bone, some fossilized bones. This is the top section of a type of dinosaur related to the Triceratops. This is one of those. I think you guys, if you any of you saw Jurassic, the most recent Jurassic Park, there's that little creature that hammers his head into things. Pretty dense skull. Uh, this is kind of a duck-billed creature. Carnivore, obviously. Different types of. I forget what the. I guess they're all ceratops, but I forget what the actual name of these dinosaurs were. You see a little one over here with kind of a dish-shaped skull. Cute. Big Tyrannosaurus. Incidentally, this museum has the largest Tyrannosaurus complete skeleton ever found in the world. Uh, um, this one is I think this is the actual skull. They have copies of the other bones, but they left the actual skull on display because they wanted to have access to it pretty frequently. And it looks, if you look at it, it's very damaged. It was crushed over time. Here's the actual copy of that skull you saw, but sort of restored to a more whole state. But this was the size of that creature. It was just ridiculously huge. So here's another Brontosaurus, different from the original one I showed you in the main section of the museum. This one's probably half the size of the one that's in the main hall. Stegosaurus. This thing must have had a brain the size of. Yeah, this is a field museum. That's right. You're dead on, Mark. So what stunned me about this guy is his brain must have been about the size of a walnut. Let's see here. More raptors. Okay, I didn't know this. I don't know how many of you guys knew this. This is a dinosaur, and this is or rather, this is not a dinosaur, and this is a dinosaur. That's what makes dinosaurs. I had no idea. Apparently, their hip sockets are hollow. If you have a closed off hip socket, um, that's where all the four limb vertebrates came up, and that's what we've got. I had no idea. I don't know if any of you guys knew that. I've lived 50 years and I had no idea that this was what determined an animal to be a dinosaur is an open hip socket. Yeah, learn something new every day. Crazy. These are pretty awesome. So if you make a skeleton of something and it's got an open hip socket, it's a dinosaur. Who knew? Little fatty McPatties. Let's see here. Underwater stuff. Pretty interesting. This one's scary. That's a fish head. That's a huge fish skull. Um, it's the size of the front end of a large motorcycle. It's enormous. And yeah, they say it had the most powerful bite of any creature that ever lived. Um, I don't know, maybe it was any sea creature, but yeah, these are like jaws of life. It's insane. This thing had to be, I would say I could probably fit my whole head in this mouth pretty easily. Shark teeth. Uh, more of those, I forget what these are called. You guys probably know. This thing's pretty huge. Let me see here. All right. There's that Titanosaur. You see some people underneath it. Kind of gives you an idea of just how big this thing was. Coelacanth, the once extinct, now not extinct fish. Let me see what else is in here. I might have missed a couple things. Ah, this is cool. All right, so this is what I was talking about. Right up to about here, where I'm drawing this line with an arrow, um, all of this is a model, and the rest is painted. Like a turtle's mouth, yeah. So, um, what was this? Oh, this was, I think, the area they had excavated some stuff. I can't remember what specifically was the importance of this, but it was pretty interesting. Um, the main thing that fascinated me about this was the animal. I mean, not the animal, the model, um, because uh, so much of it is actually just up against a backdrop. So you can see they actually modeled it to get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So this bush up in the front is probably about a 1 inch diameter circle, and these bushes in the back are probably about uh, an eighth of an inch. So they just kind of made them smaller and smaller as they got toward the back, and then filled in the rest with the painting. It's kind of cool technique. I think also this is kind of like a curved uh, background also. Some of them you'll see they'll instead of a curve they'll just literally have like a kind of a corner with a box, but they just kind of made a nice round backdrop for it. So I thought you guys would be interested in that, some of these little models they made. These are more, I think these are African. Yeah, or no, these are Pacific Islander. Yeah, like Polynesians and things like that. This one in particular, I think, was from New Zealand. They rebuilt the structure so you could kind of walk inside it if you wanted to. Kind of interesting. Every panel on this thing was carved with something on the outside. It's pretty amazing. China, little Chinese demons. I love looking at different types of statues and sculptures and kind of getting an idea of you think of the traditional Hollywood monster or creature. I mean, this is like a demon king or something. Um, and I think you kind of miss out on a lot of variety that you could otherwise see if you don't look at other cultural uh, epithets of, or rather, cultural expressions of what a monster might look like. These are Tibetan, I believe. Well, I guess that would mean this one's Tibetan actually. So not Chinese. Sorry, anybody who's Tibetan, it's Tibetan. Sorry, not Chinese. The daggers are cool though. They're triangular, which is kind of an interesting thing. They're round handled with triangular spike kind of handles. These are all ritualistic. I don't know that anybody actually fought with any of these things. These little mini drums and rattles. Kind of neat. Yeah, it's very Tibetan. Yeah. Here we go. There's a close up of some of these. More Tibet. This is a little Tibetan section they've got there. Again, I don't know that these were probably more ritualistic um, devices. They don't seem to be very functional as weapons. I think they're more decorative. There's that guy. This one was, I think this was Mexican or Aztec, Mayan maybe. I think it was Mexican, Aztec. There were Aztec, and what else do they have? There was some Inca stuff in here. I'll get to it in a little bit. Um, One that I want to build? I mean, no, but I get a lot of inspiration from it. I might incorporate some of these elements, like for example, in the game I was designing, I wanted to have it. It's supposed to be um, supernatural or magical creatures from all over the world that are represented. How do you do that if you're only using European representations of magic, right? Or European representations of superstitious creatures or supernatural creatures, when there's an entire planet's worth. So I like to look at other cultures and try to incorporate some of those design elements. Um, Game's going okay. I mean, I took a 1 week break, so it's kind of it's kind of the same place it was last time I talked to you guys about it. But yeah, I figured there might be, like the Tibetan stuff, maybe some Chinese or African or Egyptian elements, maybe Mesoamerican elements to some of the designs of the monsters. So I thought that would be a fun thing to do. Now this is a copy someone did, an artist representation of this, which I guess they left on the site, which I'm glad they did. Um, yeah, they called him 18 Rabbit. I'm not really sure why. So this one's Mayan. Maybe he ate 18 rabbits or killed 18 rabbits in one night. Who knows? Something gave him that name, I guess. Um, Not anymore. I wish. I got to go to work tomorrow. Ugh. Um, yeah, just more statue, small miniature heads and things like that. Just to kind of get an idea of some of the design elements they had. Here's some mother and child. Um, I don't know. I just really like how different cultures represented human beings. These over here almost look animal-like. They almost look like little rabbits, but that's just the particular style they use for those. This one's pretty cool. Some of the paintings are interesting. Spearheads. Ah, yeah. So these are teeth. What are these? Mammoth teeth, I think. I think that's what they are. Yeah, some kind of elephant teeth. I don't remember what they were being used for though. But yeah, I'd never seen that before. That's pretty interesting. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is part of a section of jaw where the teeth are attached, and then there's that tusk that grows off of this part here. Really, really cool. It's a giant molar. Some hunting implements. If you guys are ever interested in making something look really primitive, there you go. Some jars, different types of designs on them. Beads for all you people that like beads. Beads galore. Um, and yeah, from what I was reading, apparently red was a color of authority. And so the more red beads you had, or if you had some sort of headdress or necklace or some sort of decorative element sewn into your clothing with these red beads, it was you were kind of a bigwig. Here's some gold stuff. Other things they use for decorative items. Some clothing. I like taking pictures of these to give me an idea of how ancient peoples dressed. Um, I mean, these are estimations. No one will ever know specifically. I think they're very good calculations. I mean, good estimations of how they probably dressed based on either what they found in written text or, uh, carved or images of the time. Maybe European accounts too. I can't. These are all cooking implements. Ah, this thing was cool. So here's another example of us. This is a city model. I have no idea what the scale is. It's probably like 1/1000th scale. Maybe a little bit larger, but like Z scale. But here's the pyramids section, and then here's all the surrounding towns. Beads currency. I think they actually used what was it they said they used? They had a type of currency. They did a lot of it was through just basic trade, but there was a type of currency in some of these cultures. I don't remember what it was. I know it wasn't beads. Yeah, so just thought I'd show you this. This is pretty cool. I mean, this did a whole civilization with the main city. Like this is the center, the city center, I guess you'd call it, and then these are all the little surrounding homes, mansions, maybe small temples, garrisons, things like that. Kind of cool. More stone carvings. I guess these are Zapotecs. Pretty cool. Another model. Pretty nice one. Actually went to the trouble of I don't know if this was supposed to be representative of people. I don't think so. I think they're actually some kind of stone altars, maybe. Another way they did the background. Another city. So, I mean, there's lots of ways to represent um, cities and towns. I always thought it'd be cool to make a small cityscape just to have mecha fight in. You don't see that a lot. You just don't get a lot of uh, really large cityscapes for mecha battle games. It's always like open terrain, but imagine, like, I mean, you've seen the cartoons, probably the animes. They've always got some kind of city they're fighting in. Here we go. Cool. Yeah, I've heard that there were some Native Americans that used shells for currency. These are pretty neat. Oops, I'll skip through. This is the one I wanted to show you guys right here. This blew me away. I think these figures in the foreground are about 3 to 4 inches for the adults, but it's showing like a typical market. I don't know about the scale of that city. I doubt it. That was probably a super tiny scale. What's cool about this market, and what I was saying earlier, how they kind of reduce the size of things as they go into the background to kind of give it a greater sense of depth. They did that with the figures. All of these people get smaller and smaller as you go toward the back of the model. So in this little diorama they created, you imagine this is like a little dock coming off of a river, either a man-made canal of some sort. Um, they're bringing their wares from their little village or farm or wherever they are downriver to this big market, and then they're dropping off their stuff to trade or sell or whatever. But man, they got into some serious detail here. Um, and like I said, what's really amazing is they didn't just go into detail with the fabrics and the food and the clothing. They started reducing the scale as they go further and further back. So these guys out here in the back, these full-grown adults, are about the height of the children in the foreground almost at some point. Pretty cool. I mean, that's a lot of figures too to sculpt. That's got to be at least maybe 100. These are weapons, axes, axe heads, club heads. You just wedge a little stick in here. I think they were probably. I don't think they were iron. I forget what they said it was. Could be copper or maybe some kind of amalgam or alloy. This is like just a little painting of some stuff. Okay, I had to get a shot of this because I never thought about it. That's a manta ray skeleton. I'd never considered that manta rays had a skeleton inside them that looked like that. I just figured it was a rib cage and that their wings were just the fleshy bits. Um, yeah, they have a skeleton that goes all the way out through the entire creature. I mean, I don't know if you guys knew that. I had no idea. No idea. So, so it says no bones, entirely made of cartilage. So this is all cartilage. Crazy. This is an elephant tusk carved. Another one. Benin. Okay. I just thought these were super cool. Gave me some ideas for some figures. Cool sword. This is a photograph, not a model, but interesting. I just like the way the houses look. They're kind of different. Masks. We're going into the Egyptian stuff. Now, some of these are kind of gory, so fair warning. There may be some bodies in here, just for anybody who gets queasy about that stuff. Artifacts. Don't know what happened there. Another model. Pretty cool. These are actually pretty good size. Oh, yeah. When I was in California, I used to go grunion running. I don't know if you know what that is. You go up to the beach, little grunions that come up, they wash up into the shore and bury their heads into the sand. I guess when they're mating, and you basically just yank them out and throw them in a bucket and cook them. Uh, yeah. So these are super cool. I have no idea what these are. I really didn't read too much into it. I was kind of just kind of trying to skim through as much as I could. Um, but yeah, pretty cool. I like the way they sculpted these things. No, I didn't see any Olmec heads. Sorry. Yeah, that would have been something cool to see. I don't know if that's because they're just so massive and heavy to transport. I doubt that's the reason. I'm sure the local government probably wants to keep the heads in the fields where they are, but I seem to recall there was a museum that had some, or at least one. I don't know why you couldn't just make a copy, you know. But yeah, that'd be cool. Seeing a real one would be interesting. Yeah, these are pretty neat. And not to get into any kind of political, make any political statement about it, but and this is just my personal take. I mean, yeah, I think it's great that we're able to see all of this stuff, but and there's a lot of argument for why it would be taken from your original place it was at. No one was taking care of it. Grave robbers were stealing them. They were being damaged or ignored, or there wasn't the funding to keep them intact. But I mean, this is basically the culture of an entire country, um, a whole civilization of people. And while I appreciate, and I guess it really makes me appreciate the fact that I can see them. But yeah, I guess there's a lot of question about whether or not we should be able to see these and why aren't didn't they remain in their country of origin? I know that in some cases they got them back or they have the rights to them and they're just kind of on tour. And that's not just Egypt, but like all the different countries. But yeah, you can make your own decision on or uh, make up your own mind about that sort of thing. But I just thought it was worth mentioning. Um, to each their own. But it it's fascinating that and I think we're very lucky that we get to see these things. So I always appreciate when I'm able to. So this is okay. Here's some more gory stuff. Uh, This is another model. This was like it's a big square column. They separated it into quarters, and you can go around the four sections of the column to see the interior of the body preparation for the mummification, which I think is amazing. So this one, I guess they take the bodies, they would drain them of all the blood, which is what these little things are, and then I guess they put this. I don't know if it was lye or salt or sand, but some kind of mix that they would pour on top to dehydrate them. Effectively, I guess, desiccating them to remove all the moisture from the body. And then they would, I guess, remove the organs, which is kind of neat. So here's another section where they're taking the organs out, very ritualized, kind of like, wow, this is some serious preparation, you know? They've got this down to a science. So there's another angle. These are the various pictures. They might have liquids in here for, I guess, I don't know if it was an embalming process or they cured the body with something. And when I say cured, I don't mean healed. I mean like beef jerky cured. Um, there may be some of these jars were to actually place the organs in. I don't know. Um, then there's the, I guess if you had some money, you could afford something like this to be put in or buried in. Pretty cool. Some more shots of this. This is, I guess, where they're doing the wrapping after they've done the remove the organs and they start mummifying them, and then they place them in the sarcophagi over there. Super cool, man. I mean, that's the model on these, and these are pretty good sized figures. I'd say this figure was probably about 3 inches tall, 4 inches tall, maybe. Not quite four, maybe three, but pretty nice. Yeah. So here's a mummified guy. Um, you can see the necklaces. They're kind of showing how they were placed on the body or on the mummy inside the sarcophagus. I guess representations of maybe it was a mother who lost their child. Maybe both of them passed. I don't know. But I think these are meant to represent either the buried or family members of the buried. Here's some other kind of interesting drawings. This is like an open market. Um, I think some of it is like they're just showing how they traded stuff. Kind of interesting. I don't know if it's let's see, barber's business wasn't busy. It's busy marketplace. Welcome to the marketplace. Yeah. So I guess this is a representation of like, hey, here's how we do business here. Pretty cool. A little mini temple. I think it was for Set. Not sure. These are some statues of some African warriors. I don't remember the tribe. May have been even. No, I don't remember. What I got a lot of good photos of is the way they did the shields. Presumably, these are pretty accurate to what they actually used in war. So I wanted to make sure I got good shots of that. Like this way this handle was gripped, pretty cool. Looks like a little leather tie on there with a sort of a wood beam that was bent over for the handle, and then they stretched some leather over. The sword with the scabbard, some type of stick. I don't know if that was part of. I think that's the throwing stick. So they would hook a part of the javelin into the end of that, and then grip onto this. There we go. Make for good umbrellas, sunbrellas. Oh yeah, this is some. What do they call this stuff? I forget. Um, um, Old man brain. Not alabaster. I forgot. Amber. It's amber. Duh. Okay. Beatles. This is just stuff I was grabbing on the way out. This may not or may be of some interest to somebody, but I thought it was fascinating. This is, you ready for this? This is a Starbucks. It's a Starbucks coffee shop. They have some kind of bean refinery in the city. It's about a 4 or 5 story building, and two of the levels are dedicated to coffee and food. But I just thought one of the big things about Chicago is the architecture, and yeah, even the interiors of some of these buildings they just go nuts in. So yeah, all of this is a Starbucks. Pretty crazy. Yeah. Incidentally, I didn't find the coffee all that great. There were like 3 Starbucks within a like walking distance of my hotel. This was one of them, and only one had great coffee. This was not one of them. Um, they were terrible. In fact, you cannot just go into this one and order what you would order in like a normal Starbucks drive-through. Um, it was pretty limited. Your selection was super limited and a little pricey, to be honest. And they weren't very helpful. I'm just going to give you my review right now. They weren't helpful. It was terrible. Don't go in there unless you just want to take some photos because it's the food wasn't great. The service was terrible. All right, I'm done ranting. But sure looks cool. Ah, so I don't know if you guys are familiar with the artist Albright. Um, this is the original painting from the movie Portrait of Dorian Gray from the 50s, which was in black and white, except, and you might recall if you saw it, um, the painting at the end of the film, I think they showed it in bright, vivid Technicolor. So you're watching 90% of the movie in black and white, and then you get this thing in there. Uh, I showed this to my brother who loves it. He actually knows of this artist pretty much. Like, I mean, he's a fan. So I sent him a picture. I said, "Well, look, I got to see the original. This thing is hideous. I mean, it's just gross. You imagine this thing just bouncing out at you from a black and white screen if you had a color TV, or if you went to the movies and you're watching everything in black and white, and then this thing pops out at you at the end of the movie in vivid color. I mean, it's just horrific. And I want to say this is about a 2.5 foot to by 5 foot painting, 3 foot by 5 foot, or maybe 2 foot by 4 foot. It wasn't small. It's a pretty good size. Yeah, I'd say maybe about 2.5 to 3 by 5. Pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. No idea what this is made of. I just thought the material looked cool. So now we're getting into this is which museum was this? This is still in the Field Museum, I think. The museum was just gigantic. No, 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 no. This is not the Field Museum. This is uh, what is it called? The Chicago Museum of Modern Art. So this was the next day. So museum number 2. So I went into their medieval, like between, I think I want to say 13th century to 16th century, arms and armor and firearms. And I love wheel lock rifles and matchlock and flintlock rifles. I'm just blown away by the amount of detail and artistry that goes into these things. The inlay, the carving of the wood. I mean, even the detail that's given to a lot of the metal furniture that gets attached to these things is amazing. But yeah, just pretty crazy. Some Orion, some chainmail. Anybody who's into medieval stuff. I mean, look at the etching on this. Pretty nice. And I say etching because it looks like an etching. I don't know that it's an actual engraving. I guess it. No, I don't think this is engraved. Maybe. I'm gonna say it's etched. Well, maybe a little bit of both. All right, this is a guard for some German duke. I can't remember the name of it, but let me just tell you this: I'm 6 feet tall, and this sword was the same height as me. And I don't mean adding these 10 inches or 8 inches. I mean from the base of the sword to the very end of that pommel um, is around 6 feet. Um, it's ridiculous. I mean, you're talking about a roughly almost 2 foot grip with a 4 foot blade. Um, it's supposed to be a guard. I think it's really meant to be more imposing than anything else. I mean, look at this. Even the guard on it is just it's just out there. Would it hurt if it hit you? Yeah. Would I be really worried this guy would be able to hit me? Not entirely. I mean, it just looks scary. I don't know how practical something like that is. Uh, yeah. I mean, I've seen Scottish claymores and other types of Japanese swords, but yeah, this one just took the cake for ludicrously imposing and to the point of impracticality. It's a nice little shot of the hilt and the pommel. Leather grip with some studs around it. Sort of a dragon head guard. Crazy. Powder box and I guess like sort of a lighting cartridge for the flint. I'm not sure how that worked. But yeah, this was your kit for your rifle, I guess. Cool dagger with looks like a wire grip, wrapped wire grip. These things were massive. And when I say massive, these pommels on the ends of these pistols were about the size of apples. Um, I mean, you're and there's a reason for that, which is cool. I mean, you've got one shot that at, at a relatively close distance. If you hit them, yeah, you're going to put a gigantic hole in whatever you hit. But if you miss, these are basically going to be your only form of defense. I mean, you're not going to just drop what you're doing and reach for a sword. You don't have time. So you basically would just whip these around and beat them to the tar out of your enemy with these giant clubs, because that's what these effectively become. After you fired them, they're just big clubs. You're basically fighting them off with little hammers. Yeah, scary. But yeah, these things were huge. I want to say about 18 inches from top to bottom. Pretty good size. Pretty big. They don't look like much there, but I guarantee you, in person, they were pretty gigantic. If you're into Maximilian armor, they have a pretty decent collection of some Germanic armor with the fluting. That's pretty typical of was it 1580s Maximilian style. Um, Byzantine guard, I think is maybe. I'm not sure. There's some nice swords, basket hilt swords. These look a little bit later. All right, this thing. I don't know if any of you guys are really big on yeah, Andy. Zweihander is like ein, zwei, drei, vier. So Zweihander would be a two-handed sword. Um, that thing was, I'd say, a four-handed sword. It was stupidly big. It was just so stupidly big. It wasn't even typical of a two-hander, a Zweihander sword. It was or what the Lancashire used, the big yeah, that's what they used. But um, Yeah, it was bigger than that. It was the biggest thing I'd ever seen. Um, without, I mean, I wouldn't say it was the biggest sword. It just didn't make any sense the way they made it. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But yeah. Anyway, back to this weird helmet. This thing right here. I don't know if any of you have ever seen one of these. This is the first time I had ever seen something like this. Um, and it's the only one I've ever seen like this. So it's like some kind of practice helmet is the way it was described. Let me see if it's a spider helmet. Spider helmet. Yeah. I mean, for obvious reasons, but okay. So I tried to get as many shots of it as I could. Yeah, it's super weird. Um, I mean, I guess in a way it makes sense. Uh, sure, okay. I wouldn't put a whole lot of faith in it, but I guess it was for practice. I've never seen anything like it. If you guys have ever seen anything like this, let me know. So, another wheel lock, real nice detail, more wheel locks. I just love the amount of, now this is more like metal inlay in some of these places. Some of this is inlay, some of this is enameled, and I think some of it is just metal panels that are screwed on, but it's like a combination of different things. Really, really nice on a burled wood is what it looks like. And you can see some more engraving or etching here on the barrels. Uh, what are these called? Those grotesque. Spider hat does whatever a spider hat does exactly. Spider hat. Yeah, Mr. Mustache here with his friendly grin. Um, those funky, funky helmets. How'd you like to get your butt kicked by a guy wearing that? Or this thing even? I mean, this one at least seems fairly practical. Pretty weird, but practical. Looks like he's got a grin on his face almost. There's the origin of the word bulletproof. If anybody's ever seen armor before with a big dent in it, there's your proof that this thing can survive a bullet and not get you killed. I mean, personally, if I were going to do that to show somebody, I'd be like, yeah, let me show you in a place it's not likely to be as noticeable. But I guess if you're trying to show off that your armor is bulletproof, I mean, having it right there front and center is, I guess, one way to go. Um, yeah, it's a bit much, but I mean, honestly, how else are you going to test it, right? You don't know if it's going to survive a bullet until you try. I would like that to be the case before I get in the armor. It would hurt like hell. Yeah. Well, yeah, basically the guy would buy the armor and ask the armor like, "Hey, can this thing survive a bullet?" And the armor would say, "Yeah." And then the guy would say, "Show me." So they would take a gun and shoot the armor more or less either point blank or from a slight distance so that they probably wouldn't get killed by the bullet bouncing off. And then, once the guy saw that there was a nice big dent and not a hole in it, he'd say, "All right, I'll buy that armor. Thank you for bulletproofing it." Bulletproof. That's where it comes from. I know, sounds silly, but it's true. So yeah, there you go. Incidentally, and I don't know how tall you guys are. I know the average height of a man is around 5'7" to 5'9" in the world, is what I understood it to be. So, and I'm not a giant or anything, but everybody knows that these folks were really tiny, right? I mean, these are some super small people. You can prove it in the pub without getting shot. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I looked at some of these armor suits, and I'm I feel like a giant pig. I couldn't even fit my head in these helmets. They just seem so tiny, um, like they were made for a high schooler. But yeah, you know, pretty cool, pretty ornate. This guy didn't have a skinny waist. Well, it probably did. I mean, but I don't know how much of you guys know about armor, but this armor was designed with that sort of uh, teardrop shape and sort of point toward the front on purpose. The idea was it wasn't just a stylistic choice. The idea was that it would deflect armor much better if it kind of stuck out. Also, if something managed to hit you in the front of the armor, this armor stuck away. It kind of jutted away from your body, 3, 4 inches. Um, yeah. So, and I don't know if I got a good shot of it from the side. Yeah. So here you go. See what I'm talking about right there? So your actual surface of your chest to your stomach is probably somewhere back here, and all of this was just kind of empty space. I mean, I guess unless you had a big gut, but the armor was shaped that way, partially from just the style of the time, but a lot of that had to do with this big open gap of space. They could put more metal on the front, um, or it kind of increased your chances of not getting stabbed straight through or shot straight through. It would deflect it at least to some degree. Yeah, but it's just such a weird helmet, right? It's just so bizarre. I've seen helmets with the like the old helmets for the cage. It's like a basket helmet. But I've never seen one that just had the prongs sticking straight out with a little curve at the ends, like little legs. I mean, the ones I'd seen, it always had some kind of horizontal support going across, like a waffle. More armor. A little bit later time period, I think. No, it could have been the same, just a slightly different style. I mean, you see that same style emulated there. I'm no armor expert, so just take what I say with a grain of salt. But um, I'm a fan. I like reading about it, so I know a little bit. This is a pretty cool display. Pretty neat. And what's nice is, you finally get to see the colors. I think one of the complaints a lot of, and I don't personally have this complaint. I know it's a stylistic choice, but what you see a lot of in movies and TV is these knights and these armored characters, and they're running around, and it's so dark and so gloomy and so like just it's gothic and severe and dark. And I think in real life it just really wasn't like that. They were probably more prone to wear things like this, bright brilliant colors, silks. I mean, this is at a later time, but even prior to this, I mean, you always see Vikings wearing like biker jackets and things, or what amounts to like just a full leather outfit. Um, I mean, it's not like color wasn't invented until later. I mean, it's been around for a long, long, long time. So it's nice to see representations where they actually have bright colors, showing more or less what was worn, instead of just everybody wearing gray or black. But yeah, I mean, it looks cool if everybody looks like Batman. You can see the patterns here. I mean, it's just a lot of detail in these things. The heraldry and the sort of emblems they put on the shoulder blades. That's it's freaking cool. Pretty nice. I doubt that anybody actually fought in duels or anything else, and these look like absolutely just decorative uh, display armor, the type of stuff you'd wear to show off how rich you were, not to fight. they'd probably wear something a lot more practical in a battle. Another really nice pistol. This one's not a matchlock, or not a mat. I'm sorry, not a wheel lock, um, like the others. But wow, look at that! Just super, super nice. This looks like it might be maybe ivory. I'm not sure. Um, Yeah, I did read, Mark, that there was a section of the bars in the front of that particular helmet that would flip up, but the ones around the side stayed rigid. But yeah, it did say you could flip up the front of them. You're a musician, Esrom. It doesn't count. If you played more happy pop music, you'd probably wear more bright colors. If you wear and if you were playing electric guitar or anything electric, you got to have at least an 80% black wardrobe. I think about 80% of my wardrobe is black, but black is slimming it. I'm kind of fat. But I like color. Color's good. Color's fun. Let's see. Looks like a burled wood handle, leather handle with some studs in it. Pretty nice. I like that. It's an interesting pommel. Oh, yeah. So that pommel, I think it actually, if I'm not mistaken, and Mark, you seem to be pretty educated in this. It looks like that pommel is a rest, like a rifle rest, if I'm not mistaken. So this could just be less of a more of an arming sword or a backup sword, and maybe its primary function is just to act as a rest for the rifle, and then as a backup weapon when you've run out of shots or the enemy's gotten too close. So that's kind of interesting. I know I've seen that before. Usually I see that in the form of a long wooden stick, though. Um, so, like I said, I'm just guessing it could just be decorative, but seems like a pretty practical use for something like that. This is what I really wanted to get into too, is the bows. You don't get to see these up close too much, at least I don't. And what I thought was really interesting is how they've got this thing mounted in here with the tension around it at the base. I'd never seen this before. Um, or maybe I'd never paid attention to it before, but yeah, I knew about how this was typically strung up and what this was made from, but I'd never seen this kind of configuration or setup where they had it strapped in tight at the base of the bow. So that's kind of interesting. And this one looks like a pulley, not a pulley, but a lever to bring it back. Man, that's got to be, you got to have some major arm strength for that. Another type of backup sword. So here we go again. There's an enormous amount of tension that this setup like this can take. I can't imagine that I'm guessing. I'm just guessing. This is maybe for the blowback after the arrow's been released. You've got all this tension coming back, and then you're releasing it with such enormous force. Maybe this is to keep the whole bow from just ripping out the front of the crossbow, or adding additional strength to that, because that seems like it would be the most. You think about all that force being released and this thing just whipping back. Um, I would imagine that has a lot to do with just keeping this bow intact and keep this whole thing from flying off the front of it after it's been fired. That's my guess. You hippie face. Yeah, Esrom. It's like, yeah, I had an inner child. I ate him. Um, yeah. So that's what that looks like. That looks like that's, in this case, it looks like that's the main primary means of attaching the bow to the main part of the crossbow. Wow, that's amazing. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe you guys have seen that. I was just fascinated by that. I'd never seen that before, or I never noticed it before. Interesting shield. Kind of reminds me of a Roman scutum a little bit, but a totally different shape. I mean, I'm just saying in that it's kind of rectangular and has a curve to it, but it's got that big section that juts out. I forget what the name of this type of shield is. That's another smaller version of that. These have seen better days. This one almost looks like a Viking sword, or what I would think a Viking sword looks like. These two, this helmet maybe, or at least of that sort of time period when the Vikings were attacking England and France, or yeah, spike in the middle of the shield, super cool. Just cool factor. That's all that is. I don't know how practical something like that is, but it looks cool. Flat shield too. You don't see a lot of those, or at least not in metal. But yeah, from what I understand, flat shields were a thing just about everywhere. This one's cool. It's got a wind up tooth loader. How cool is that? I mean, it seems a little odd, right? I mean, this thing, it goes, and then what do? You just, I'm sure this whole thing doesn't move with it. That would be scary. Cool design. Say, isn't that the Bruce Wayne? No. Um, Pistol dagger. Awesome. They called this a flash checker or powder checker. Don't know what you guys know about that, but a powder checker. Um, I guess to test how strong that particular mix of powder is, so you can determine how much you're going to put in it. That's my best guess. I was walking through this pretty quick. I was just able to grab some snapshots and maybe figure out what the name of it is. But yeah, that's what my guess is. Is you would pack it with a certain amount of powder, like maybe an ounce or a gram or whatever. Um, Light it, and then based on how far this thing was pushed, you could determine how powerful that particular amount of powder was, and then determine how much you were going to put in your pistol. I mean, it seems if that's the case, that seems pretty ingenious to me. But yeah, like a force meter. Exactly. That's what I'm thinking, Andy. This one has like a little mini flip out sticky pointy thing, which this is a dueling pistol kit, cleaning kit. Here's the other pistol down here. Pretty fancy. You can make your own balls, your own fighting balls, flintlocks. These look like all wheel locks. Yeah, a very good picture. God, look at these. That just blows me away how much effort was put into the designs of these handles. All right. And if there's any pictures you guys want me to pause on a little bit longer than others, then you just let me know. Ah, sorry, it's my allergies again. Yeah, look at these little guys. So this is almost obviously some kind of hunting pistol, I'm guessing, just based on the decorations. Small game birds and little animals like squirrels and stuff. Another powder charging, what are the little container? Looks like there's the opening. You pop that open, push your powder out, snap it close. Man, that's nice. I mean, that's just Really well made. Look at the detail on that stock. All right. All right, later, Andy. You can always catch up later. There's a lot of World War II stuff in here and some modern technology too, some space stuff and some robots. So if you want to watch it later, you can skip through it toward the last quarter and see the rest of it. Yeah, got a little decorative with this one. So here's a flintlock mechanism. Flint would go in there, charge the powder. Pretty cool. Oh yeah, Andy Stream's gonna be starting in a little bit. Is he starting at 3? Um, hey Andy, you're starting at 9 o'clock your time, right? So that's in about another 30 minutes. All right, guys. Well, I don't want to. I don't want to miss Andy's either. So let me try to get through this a little bit quicker. We can always follow up later. There's just so much stuff in here. Architectural elements. I'll just get through some of these. These are more Mesoamerican things. I'm pausing long enough on these so that you can take a look at it. This is a shot from the Modern Art Museum across the street. The ratchet bow? No, I'm not real sure. It, I imagine it would probably be later 16th century. Yeah, I could, but I mean, I've got a lot of other stuff I want to work on. I don't want to spend a lot of time on another live stream. Um, there really isn't that much further to go on this. This is the last part right here, and this is the industry. What is it? Museum of Science and Industry. So you got the Zephyr train, which I've got a few pictures of. This thing is amazing. There's a whole Lego section in here. These are all actual, these aren't models, these are actual vehicles. It just blows me away. A Stuka dive bomber. I think that's a Stuka. An Audi car, the little electric. That was one of the displays. Lego man. First electric car, 1923. 23. And if you've ever seen an old battery from that time period, I mean, I think they still have batteries. Like you could just pour distilled water in it, take the battery out, clean it, fill it with distilled water, put it back in, and then I can't remember. I think it was a crank charger. But yeah, I mean, it was a 1923 electric car. Nice. I think Jay Leno owns something similar, if not this exact model, at least something similar. Full-size steam train. All right, this I've got some video of, and I'll show you what that looks like. That's pretty amazing. So this is an enormous, enormous, enormous train set with a city. I think it's part of it is Seattle. At least I don't know if they just kind of threw in random buildings or if they actually meant it to be a specific city. But the Space Needle's in here somewhere. Spitfire right behind that Stuka or a German plane. Um, yeah, I think it's a Stuka because there's bombs all over the thing. Life-size Spitfire. What's cool is you could actually get up close. What I really thought was cool was this guy right here, 740, is it a 747? Um, you can go inside this, which is super cool. There's the robots I showed you guys before. This is a giant example of what an avalanche does. There.  'Cause- 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 'cause kind of cool. Tornado experiment. And there's where these little kids are. There were levers you could adjust to make this thing spin faster or change shape. It's kind of interesting. I have no idea what this display was for. Stuff you make out of plastic. I have no idea. Star Trek stuff, if you've seen the movies. An engine. Cool models. All right, so the submarine, one giant piece of resin. I thought they did a pretty good job on this one. This looked like they probably used some sort of cotton or fiber material for that. Pretty good little models. There's a Merrimack. The USS Constitution, is that what it was? Battle damaged wood. You don't see a lot of that in models where they go through the trouble of damaging them like that. At least that type of model that I've ever seen. This is an actual World War II German sub that was captured and then put underground on display, and you can go inside it. And no, I didn't get to go inside it. I wish I had. It was about 18 bucks a person, and they were sold out for the day for tours. But I tried to get as many photos as I could of it. Some of the things that really blew me away that I'd never noticed before was like this sort of fin feature they've got on the uh, vertical, or was it vertical planes? I forget. This is not a torpedo tube. This is actually for the. It's not for the anchor. I think water passes through here. I forget what it was for though. There's an actual torpedo being launched from a tube. And again, not a model. This is a life-size, actual German World War II sub that was captured and then brought back intact, um, undamaged. Just crazy. I mean, just nuts. And it was massive and super sleek. I mean, just like I just thought like I can't even believe they made this thing back then. It was just a really super cool design. The double rudders, the more maneuvering planes, the double engines. You can just get so many cool ideas off of this thing. This was what was this? Some kind of it wasn't the engine. I forget what it was called. Oh, here we go. Piston air compressor. There you go. You can read that later. A good shot of it. For anyone who wants to you get some inspiration for Greeblies and things. Yeah, the sub is on permanent display. I'll show you why in a minute because good luck ever getting it out. It was basically buried in its own chamber under the front of the museum. This is how they got it in. I thought this was fascinating, so I had to get pictures of this. And this is pretty much the last of what I've got to show you guys. But yeah, so this thing was lowered with these massive. First, it was wheeled through the streets to the museum. You'll see here. See the giant area down here at the bottom where they were actually going to place it. And there's the sub being wheeled over, and then they've got all these cranes ready to lower it down. So here's where they get it to a certain point. they move those over once this gets centered, and then it just gets lowered down into these emplacements. That is just insane. Yeah, yeah. I have a lot of ideas. I especially like this for a mech or spaceship docking system, or yeah. I mean, there's just all kinds of cool ideas. Another model of some other vehicles. I think these are the guys that actually captured the sub, if I'm not mistaken. This is the two ships that found the sub, and I don't know. I didn't read much into it. I'm sure there's a whole story behind it, but it was these are the guys that caught the sub and brought it back. I guess the Germans were just like, hey, yeah, we're not even going to try, buddy. Just take us on. We surrender. Because I can't imagine them going without a fight unless it was just something they just couldn't deal with. And this is kind of a model of what they dropped it into and how everything's set up. So yeah, I would say permanent is a good word. I don't know if Spider Math or Darth are on. I can't remember which of them was working on um, a space shuttle, but I took these pictures for them. So I thought you guys might like to see the interior of this shuttle, or not shuttle, but this Apollo pod. Crazy. That's the headrest. So yeah, their feet are pointing up in the air when they're in this thing. And there's three seats right next to each other, really tight. Again, I'm pretty sure they choose pilots of these things for the same reason they choose jockeys and race car drivers. You don't see a lot of really super tall jockeys and race car drivers. The smaller you are and the less you weigh, the easier it is to build around you. Sadly, I will never fit into one of those categories. I'm a pretty big guy. This is cool. This is when they were dropped down. Life size front end of the shuttle, space station model. Now, I thought you guys might like this. It looks like the majority of this is 3D printed, but this little, just to give you guys some ideas who work on vehicles and you're trying to decide on wheels, uh, how easy would it be to just find a ring, a couple of bottle caps, and some beads to make the replica of these wheels? So, yeah. I mean, even this space station, I mean, you can get creative with stuff. I think that here's your staples, right? Um, I think you guys could easily build some sort of futuristic. You don't have to go crazy with colors or paint. You don't have to go nuts with rust effects or anything else. You can keep it super simple and it'll still look super futuristic. Unless you just want that used universe cool that you get from Star Wars. But the whole point of Star Wars is that's their design language. That's the way they wanted to interpret what they were going to be displaying, is they wanted a universe that looked used. But if you're just coming up with something futuristic, I mean, hey, maybe it's a futuristic culture that actually keeps and maintains their vehicles to a nice degree rather than letting them kind of get beat up. I mean, the Millennium Falcon, in my opinion, was always to me the beat up pickup truck of space. Well, you look at the stuff that they had on Naboo, and those were the Porsches and Ferraris of space, right? So, yeah, I just thought I'd bring that up, show you guys some stuff that could probably be replicated fairly easily. And if not replicated, at least maybe you could get some inspiration from it. Like these foil sections. on this, I know this could be easily replicated, right? So so here's some other one. This is supposed to be a concept for a space elevator. Getting pretty close to the end again. You know, I thought this was kind of cool. I'll go through this kind of quick. I was just blown away by how the suspension on this works. So it's just basically a bunch of bands of thick leather, uh, and this thing is sort of suspended in between. And I knew there was some kind of suspension, and I knew that they had leaf springs then, but I never realized that they used just these huge, thick bands of what basically amounts to thick leather mounted in here. And maybe I don't think it's wood. I'm pretty sure it's some sort of a very thick leather, horsehide or rawhide. Thanks. But yeah, I mean, this is the height of travel technology, man. Back at the time, there's a brake and everything. Here's another detail of that for anybody that's interested in Western stuff. You can get you've got some nice close-up shots of those things. Anybody who's really into like scale model building, prairie wagon, brake. I'm not entirely sure what that tooth thing was for. I think it had something to do with that, the way it turned or brake. Maybe something to do with this. Yeah, this is awesome. Yeah, interesting, right? What is gas? Watch the robot milk the cow. I thought this was kind of cool. I didn't show the cow. I had. I mean, you know what? Actually, I think I have this on video. Here we go. Kids, close your eyes. I was a little disappointed it didn't actually make contact and show stuff happening, but whatever. You get the idea. So this is where milk comes from, everybody. Brace yourself. This is some lady that built a castle, little model castle, some fairy castle. I wasn't really into it, but I took a couple pictures of it anyway. Hall of Mirrors, and I'll skip through this one finally. I think this is the end. This is a guy that makes art out of Legos for all you Lego fanatics out there. Pretty amazing how this one really picks up the subtleties and your eye fills in the blanks when you get here versus here. This is the same thing. I forget the name of the artist, but if you looked at the Chicago Museum of Industry and Science, or Science and Industry, you can probably find his name. These were all life size. At least I think they were around 6 or 6.5 feet tall. This was about 8 feet tall. This was pretty huge. I'd say this was about 10 feet long. So this is interesting. It was some sort of a fashion uh, group that was doing a collaborative thing with them. And so he made the dress out of Legos for, and some other photos as well. Um, so what she's actually wearing is a Lego dress, and then they had the actual dress on display, which I thought was kind of cool. Kind of neat. Some Lego clouds, tigers. These are all life size. Well, I wouldn't say life size. We'll say this would be about the size of a baby tiger. Little tiny elephants, but they were large. Obviously, it's not a life size blue whale. So this is the last footage I got. It's of the train that goes around that lower level I showed you earlier. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. Here's where it's going through the tunnel. There's the Space Needle. And the last two shots are going to be of these planes here. For those of you that like the detail of, I mean, just look at the size of this thing. It's just massive. Yeah, my wife would never let me build that in our living room or dining room or garage or anywhere else for that matter. I forgot they'd named this the Picard. I thought that was hilarious. Cockpit of the 747. And then I think this might be the end of it. There's a few things here you guys can go look at later. And I guess that's going to wrap it up. This is a heat resistant mask. If you like that, this is super weird. And that was when I was texting you guys at Andy's the other day. All right, later. I think that's it. Oh, yeah, this is the weird, creepy stuff. Hey, by the way, if anybody wants me to send them pictures of any of these, I can. I don't mind. I'll email them to you, whichever ones you're interested in looking at. Just let me know. Send me an email, bots2beasts@gmail.com, and I'll send you pics of whatever you like. Robot arm. But looks like that's the end of it. Thanks for stopping in, guys. I'll talk to you later. I'll see you in Andy's chat in a little bit in his live stream. If you haven't already, please like the video and subscribe if you haven't. That'd be cool. And we'll see each other again later. Hey, no problem. Bye.